Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to create a beautiful masterboard in 5 easy steps. So when you're starting a masterboard, really all you need is one idea. A color, a collage paper, anything that gets you started. And for me, I'm going to go with Pantone's Color of the Year Viva Magenta because I found this tissue paper that's a perfect magenta color. And for whatever reason, I decided that I wanted to cut out some circular shapes. So I grabbed my punch, and as you can see, tissue paper doesn't punch very easily. But I found that if you put a paper underneath, you are able to punch it more successfully. And as I continued to play with my punches, I discovered that if you put the paper and you flip it, as you're going to see me doing now with the paper on the top, put the stamp like this or the punch like this and press down, it even works more easily than any of the other ways. So, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. So this is just dollar store cheap gift bag tissue paper. So I cut out 3 sizes of circles with my punch. And now we're going to get to step 1. So step 1, we want to add some background interest. And I am going to use my DIY foam stamps. And I'm stamping with black archival ink that I'm putting on with the Ranger blending foam. I'm just rubbing it on and then I'm stamping. Now, this is the first layer. So a lot of this we won't see, but it'll be peeking through. This adds a lot of interest. And when you're doing this on a masterboard, since you have no idea exactly where you're going to be more creative, I find it really shows up. I'll link the video where I make these DIY stamps. I absolutely love them, and they can be used in the first layer like I'm doing here or in any layer. So I've chosen to do 3 stamps, 3 different patterns. And again, I know that some of this is going to be covered up by step 2 or step 3. So I'm not worried about putting too much. Now, at this stage of the masterboard, before I colorize or add anything else, I could take a photocopy of this. And then I can print it off in black and white and do future steps differently. Speaking of steps, step 2 is add collage papers. Now for collage papers on my page, I'm using some vintage music papers. And I chose to pick some of these because it's adding that golden color. And I know that's going to go well with the magenta. It's also adding some fine patterning, the music notes. And I'm just layering this up. I've got different vintage paper. Some are, they're slightly different colors. Some are more white. Some are more yellow. Now this will add, as I said, the pattern, but it also adds a little bit of texture because you're layering it up. And then I'm going to collage the tissue paper circles on this as well. To glue down the music paper, collage paper, and the tissue paper, I'm just going to use my fluid matte medium. And I put a coat underneath and a coat on top. And you can see where I'm gluing down the collage papers, the music ones, it's blocking, covering up some of the stamping that I've done. Which makes it kind of peek through, which I think it makes it really interesting. One thing you can do with the music papers that you have, if you want to take them and you can blow them up so you get a larger scale musical notes. And again, this is just going to add interest. Some of this will be knocked back by the upcoming steps as well. So step 1 was stamping. And while I use my DIY stamps, you can use any stamps that you have. Here I'm gluing down the tissue paper. And because you can see through it, some of that black stamping still is showing up. And I'm liking the circular shape here. Now, if you don't have punches, you can trace lids and cut them out. You could have also just ripped the tissue paper and had strips of that. That would give a different look. Because this is a masterboard and not an actual art journal page, and I don't know what I'm going to make out of this, if I'm going to make 4x4 magnets or a 6x6 card or do it for an art journal page, I just find I'm freer in my decision making. And that gives me more creativity and gives me much more interesting backgrounds. That went over the edge, so I'm just going to cut that off and I'm going to put it on this side. I always like putting the elements, collage elements, or stamping off the page. It takes your eye off the page. It doesn't just end there, and it looks more real somehow. So every time that I do a masterboard, I want to always do something different. Now, as you're going to find out, or might be thinking if you've watched my channel, well, she kind of went in the same color scheme. And I kind of did as my last masterboard, but it's a darker magenta, duller colors, and the stamps and stencils are all different as well. So you get a very different feel. So step 3, we are going to add texture. Now you could put modeling paste through here. I prefer on my masterboards because I might use it, I might glue it down. I don't want it to get too thick. So instead of using modeling paste or texture paste, I'm using thick gesso, and I'm just pushing it through a stencil. And I chose a floral motif for the stencil. Now this is not exact stenciling at all. Some of it's seeping under. I just want to add texture and a hint of floral. And I'm going to put this down in various places on the masterboard. I also like how this just blocks off. Again, it pushes back some of those circles. It covers up some of the music paper, some of the stamping. Now, people often have asked, how do you know when your masterboard's done? And my answer to that is, I just know. At this stage, I'm going, oh, it's not coming together. It's not quite, it's not there, it's not there. And then at some point, and I'll tell you where that point is later down the road, you just know that it is done. Now remember, with a masterboard, because you're going to use it as an Insta background for a variety of projects, you can always add to it later. It doesn't have to necessarily be completely done. And if I did like 3 art journal pages of different sizes from this one, I could do something dramatically different with each one, using the masterboard as the base. This stencil is from the Crafter's Workshop and it's called Lilacs. This is the 12-inch size. Now right now this looks, I get it, it looks like a hot mess. So once I get all the thick gesso pushed through the stencil, I'm going to give this a good dry before I move to step 4. Now step 4, I'm going to add color, and I'm using acrylic paints. Now magenta is just almost at the 12 o'clock, a little bit over towards the 1. And I am using analogous colors. I am using yellows and oranges and a little bit of that purple at the 1 o'clock on this page. Those colors will work well together. So I'm adding Naples yellow was the yellow. I'm adding a little bit of orange and a little bit of quinacridone magenta and mixing them with maybe a little bit of white gesso as well. And I'm blending it right on the page. And again, I'm using the Ranger blending foam. I'm loving that yellow in there. It just really brightens the page. But you can see every little detail. You can see the stamping from step 1. You can see the collage papers, the music paper and the tissue paper circles. You can see the texture, although we are going to bring that out a little bit more. Remember that texture was thick gesso? Gesso resists the paint, so I can take a baby wipe and wipe it back. And that's making the texture stand out. You can see some of that floral patterning a little bit, and I add paint and then I take off paint till I get it right. Right here I'm adding some gesso because I want to add yellow, and it was too dark. I just wanted more of that yellow because I was really liking that. So I just added some gesso. I'm putting the heat tool on it. I'll dry that up and then I'll come back and I'll put some of the yellow paint back where I want it. So I'm adding paint, taking off paint with the gesso resist technique. Where the paint is on the raw paper, it's not coming off because it's just soaked into the paper. And I'm liking the little bit of white that comes through when I've wiped back the paint off of the gesso. This color is quinacridone violet. It's a little bit on that purple side. It was a little bit towards the right from the magenta color. And I wanted it darker. It was very light. I wanted to have a little bit more darker tone in there. If you don't have a color, you can just take the quinacridone magenta and add just a smidge of black in it, and I would have got a very similar color. This is my cutting templates, and I'm looking and I'm saying, am I done? Am I done? I'm liking it so far, but I'm not thinking I'm done yet. Here I'm just wiping it back again. Now step 5, I'm going to add some stamping and add contrast. And I'm using some of Tim Holtz's stamps. This is from Faded Type. This one's the number 1. And I'm stamping with black acrylic paint that I'm just putting on the stamp and stamping. This is kind of fine detail. They're a little bit finer than the first stamps that I use, my foam stamps. But I'm really liking the addition of this. It's adding contrast and fine detail. And that's step 5. I've even turned the page here a little bit. I don't know which end is going to be up when I actually come around to using this. So right now I'm just it's mark making. Using the stamps, using the stencils. It's just interesting marks to make your background interesting. Then I wanted to add some script, and I'm using the Naples yellow to add contrast. So I went contrast dark, contrast light. And I'm stamping this especially on the circles because it's showing up really well, and on darker parts of the masterboard. I won't be stamping it on where there's the Naples yellow because it won't show up. And once I started doing this, it was like, yes, this is done. The masterboard's done. When you start thinking, oh, I could use this I could put this focal image on, that's when you know your masterboard is close to done. Speaking of which, I will be releasing a video where I use this masterboard to make an art journal page, a card, an ATC. I'm not sure what I'm going to make. I'm getting an Asian feel from it. I think it's the addition of the floral thick gesso through that lilac stencil. Not sure. I have some ideas floating around. I'm going to sleep on it, and so be sure to subscribe to my channel. Check the option to be notified of upcoming videos. That way you'll be sure to see what I turn this masterboard into. Oh, love it. Texture, pattern, color, yum. Now, as a bonus step, I'm adding Shimmer by splattering gold paint. The gold is very much like that Naples yellow, and it just, burgundy and that Naples yellow look so good together. So I'm going to be going through my focal images, my napkins, my printables, my stamps, and think about what I might like to use as a focal image using this background, using this masterboard. Until next time, go get creative.